While the Prime Minister hides in the fetal position under his desk, will he call a carbon tax election now?
Good morning. How's that for an intro? It's Pierre Poilievre, not yesterday, but on Monday, talking about a carbon tax election and the fact the Prime Minister continues to hide under his desk. We've got a lot to talk about this morning. I haven't got a whole lot of video clips to show you, but there is something very significant going on because there might be a lot of Liberal MPs who are prepared to vote against their own government in a non-confidence vote. But today is caucus day. This is a historic day. They're going to confront Justin Trudeau. And when I come back, more about what's going to happen today. So we are in a very precarious position in this country. We need political change, but we also need to resolve to resist. Yes, please like the station. We're beating the YouTube suppression and censorship. We're going to beat Trudeau's censorship bills that are coming. And I sense we are in a historic moment right now. There is an election in the offing. I've been saying it's going to be mid to late November. Nobody else has. You can bet Justin Trudeau is saying, hey, the only one who's guessing this right is that KRAYDEN guy. No, I don't suggest for a minute he even knows I'm alive. He's probably the one prime minister in the last 20 years I've never actually met, shook his hand. I've met just about every other prime minister since Brian Mulroney and had a chance to at least shake their hands and say hello. Justin Trudeau's never been somebody I even wanted to meet. But I think I'm right about this, and I'll tell you why as the story unfolds here. Now, I've got a great clip to show you. I'm not going to show it right away because we're saving that one. But here is what I think. Nobody else has discovered this as far as I know in terms of putting this up this morning or last night. This is why Liberal MPs are going to tell Trudeau today at the caucus meeting, it's time to leave. It's time to go. My old friend, David Collette, used to be the pollster at Sun News when I worked there. Advocates data poll, 57% of Canadians living in a Liberal-held riding want their MP to call on Justin Trudeau to resign and not run again. This, my friends, is probably the most important piece of information I'm offering to you today. This is why Liberal MPs are going to be confronting Justin Trudeau today at caucus. Now, caucus starts about 10 o'clock, so we're an hour and a half away. It will meet usually for 2 hours on a regular day. It might go overtime today. Now, caucus is very secretive. It's even not quite as secretive as cabinet, because if you know anything about classifications, security classifications, there's such a thing as CC, which is cabinet confidential, and that's usually top secret. Caucus is confidential, but you know what? The MPs are notorious for leaking information. They used to all parties used to do this. They'd bring cell phones into the meeting and they would be secretly texting information out at times. Or they would wait till afterwards. And of course it was, I don't know where that came from. And I think all the parties were guilty of this. But it's supposed to be confidential. As it's like Vegas. What happens in caucus stays in caucus. This is going to be a very difficult caucus meeting for Justin Trudeau because he's going to have to be forced to face his limitations and the fact that not only are Canadians fed up with him, but at least 40, I would say it's probably 50 caucus members, Liberal MPs, are fed up with him as well and are saying it's time to go. There's a famous scene. A Conservative Prime Minister in Great Britain, Neville Chamberlain, when he was reaching the end of his tether. He was reaching the end of his rope after years of appeasement and after losing badly in the first year, or the first 9 months of the Second World War. He was forced out by his own caucus and eventually by Parliament. And of course, there's the famous scene, it is time to go. And that's what people are going to be saying to Justin Trudeau today. Justin, Mr. Prime Minister, it's time to go. You are just doing too much damage to the party, to the country, and to my riding. And that's what it comes down to ultimately for these guys and these women. Are they going to be reelected? Do they have a hope in hell of being reelected with Justin Trudeau in charge? No. So let's have a look here at what happened in question period yesterday. Pierre Poilievre, Conservative leader, just taunting Justin Trudeau about what's going to happen to him in caucus tomorrow.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Mr. Speaker, we now learn there are about 40 Liberal MPs that believe that this NDP Liberal Prime Minister is not worth the cost, crime, and corruption. But there's this strange rule in the Liberal caucus that you need to have permission from the Prime Minister to speak at the microphone. So a Liberal MP wanted to get up and say quadrupling the carbon tax is a bad idea, or doubling housing costs is making people homeless. They can't do it. Will the Prime Minister lift the gag so his Liberal MPs can say to his face that he's not worth the crime, the cost, and the corruption?
Yeah, I mean, we can go without the slogans, Pierre, but isn't this incredible? This is the essence of a totalitarian leader. Leader in quotation marks. Trudeau won't allow Liberal caucus MPs to ask a question without his permission. That's the whole point of the caucus, is for them to air their differences, to air their grievances, to air their notions that the party is not on the right track. This is an opportunity to air difference of opinion. So if Justin Trudeau is saying, hey, no, I decide who talks, the man is delusional. Now, this is why I'm predicting he's not going to prorogue Parliament because he doesn't want to lose the legislation. He will go into an election because he thinks, despite all of the odds, despite all of these MPs, despite all of the opinion polls, he knows best and he can win. Yep. Watch and see.
Once again, in English, none of these questions have to deal with the administration of government, but I see the order. I see that the Prime Minister is rising to his feet. The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, it seems that the Conservative leader is confusing rules that apply within his Conservative caucus to rules that we have in the Liberal Party. But the reality is, Mr. Speaker, we see at which point the Conservative leader is simply focused on playing politics and gaining power. That's why he wants to talk about things that are not having to do with delivering for Canadians. He doesn't want to talk about the fact that close to 1 million Canadians will be receiving dental care because of our Canadian dental program that he says doesn't even exist and that he's voted against every step of the way.
Now, I ask the honourable member from Battle River Crowfoot to please not take the microphone when the speaker is up on his feet or when other speakers who have been recognized by the speaker is taking the floor.
I will say here, I'm just looking at some of your comments while we proceed with this broadcast, but Stringer 007, hey, I wonder if that's a James Bond reference. Yes, you've hit the nail on the head. I wouldn't be surprised either the Rebel MPs vote against their own government. That's exactly what's happening. We're going to get to some evidence of that a little later. Let's continue to watch this.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Mr. Speaker, I'm sorry to have to bring up this terrible rule. It's just that Liberal backbench MPs are coming and talking to all of us to say that they're not allowed to speak to him. And they're wondering if I could perhaps pose some questions on their behalf. Mr. Speaker, I guess they can't get anywhere with the current Prime Minister, so they'd rather talk to the future common sense conservative. Instead of silencing his own MPs, will he let them get up to the mic tomorrow to tell him that he's not worth the cost, crime, and corruption?
Teague Materi, thank you so much for this gift of $20. Thank you so much. We love you. God bless you for that.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Mr. Speaker, the reality is he can't administer the government because he's too busy fighting for his job after 9 years. Even if his MPs know it. He broke immigration, he doubled the debt, doubled housing costs, doubled crime, doubled the cost of living in a home. He wants to quadruple the carbon tax that's already forced 2 million people to a food bank, 1 in 4 kids to hunger, 25% of Canadians to poverty. Canadian food prices up 36% faster than in the States. StatsCan says we have the biggest gap between rich and poor in our recorded history. His MPs know that he's broke the country. Will he call a carbon tax election so we can fix it?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, the Leader of the Opposition, like all of us in this House, know that Canadians are facing challenging times. His solution...
Did he just say challenging times? How many times have I said on this broadcast, one of Trudeau's favorite words is challenging. Everything's challenging. That doesn't begin to describe the life a lot of Canadians are leading. It's not challenging. It's tragic. It's horrendous. It's tortuous. It's miserable. Not challenging.
However, is to offer them cuts, is to offer them no programs that they can rely on, and to vote against things like dental care and pharmacare and investments in a green economy that is going to create jobs and careers long into the future.
Stays on talking points. The green economy that is fictitious. Great janitorial positions for anybody wanting them. Nonsense. And it's not about cuts and austerity from the Conservatives. It's about putting the ball back in your court, giving you control over your life again. Whereas Trudeau wants to take control of your life and give you little stipends. Oh, we'll give you a little dental care here, a little pharmacare here, and we'll give you back some of the tax we take in the carbon. We'll give you a carbon rebate. It's all little stipends while we starve and while we don't make enough money to put food on the table.
He wants to harm Canadians where we're focusing on delivering for them. He wants cuts to programs and services while we're busy investing in Canadians and their futures. That's the choice Canadians get to make.
A quick little episode here.
A strong defense from his key allies.
Any minute spent on this garbage is a minute that's not spent on Pierre Poilievre and what he wants to do to this country.
What Mark Miller,
anything that comes out of this man's mouth is garbage. This is the guy who has completely destroyed the immigration system in Canada. He puts an immigration cap on, not this year, but after the next election. What a joke this man is. And he's got the nerve to say it's garbage to talk about Justin Trudeau leaving. Yeah, well, your job is gone. Your history, buddy.
one of Justin Trudeau's closest friends, thinks is garbage, has support with some of his colleagues. Sources telling Global News up to 30 MPs have signed a document asking the Prime Minister to leave.
Clearly in the public opinion polls, we are not leading. There is concern on the part of members of caucus. It's important we have that conversation.
Those concerns a major topic during today's cabinet meeting, which ran over an hour and a half late.
Does your caucus still have confidence in you?
Leaving the Prime Minister to rush the question period.
The reality is he can't administer the government because he's too busy fighting for his job.
The Conservative leader is simply focused on playing politics and gaining power.
Two Liberal MPs that spoke with Global News described the largest ever pushback against Trudeau's leadership as made up of nearly exclusively males. Another MP classifying them as angry white men.
I knew it. You had to hear it. Oh, this caucus revolt is about angry white men. You knew this was coming from a woke party and a woke cabinet that wants to pretend this is all about white man's resentment. This is all about these white folks trying to take down this Trudeau government that is so concerned about diversity, equity, and inclusion. DEI. This is such a nonsense. But this is how people like Mark Miller and these other jokers, these other clowns who call themselves cabinet ministers are responding to this. It really is obnoxious.
Be aired tomorrow when the Liberal caucus meets.
At the end of the day, I'm approaching the next tomorrow's caucus meeting just like any other caucus meeting where we talk about issues that are important to Canadians.
And it's not any other caucus.
But debating the Prime Minister's leadership isn't a normal topic, even though it'll be the key one at the meeting.
I support him. I think he's done a good job.
Should he lead you in the next election?
I will discuss that at caucus.
Oh, just a sec. We gotta get back to this guy.
Questions for the Prime Minister as to why he should run again and what he's in it for.
What's important is we actually have a conversation on this.
And the Deputy Prime Minister believes the Liberals will leave that conversation unified.
Do you expect that this issue will be put to bed tomorrow once the caucus meets?
Yes, I do.
But Chrystia Freeland's view might...
Oh, that was a resounding yes. Yes, I do. We have become to expect this sort of thing from Chrystia Freeland. It's comical how they are all trying to pretend reality isn't staring them in the face. And of course, Justin Trudeau won't comment on this because it's not real to Justin Trudeau. It's not real. This cannot be happening because I'm just too much in control, even though it's obvious he's not. And I had to laugh there. That's Nate Erskine-Smith. You know, he's the video star. We've watched his interviews with the Prime Minister, which are really, really difficult at times. But he's actually he got Trudeau to admit that he wants an early election. And this is why I keep saying we're going to have an earlier election, because Trudeau thinks he can win. Bring it on, he says. He said roaring to go. He meant raring to go. Excuse my throat this morning. This is fascinating here. Now, this is Ken MacDonald. And you're all saying, who's Ken MacDonald? Ken MacDonald has already said he can't win. He's one of the Liberals that brought down the carbon tax in Atlantic Canada. This is a Newfoundland MP, Liberal MP. Now, Ken MacDonald is just a typical guy from Newfoundland. He's so mischievous. And I'm thinking, I don't want to be stereotypical. I've known a lot of great people from Newfoundland. You know, they have a great sense of humor. And Ken MacDonald, this is the same guy who, after he says, I've had enough of the carbon tax, he votes with the government when Pierre Poilievre introduced a carbon tax non-confidence vote. And he actually did the finger thing, right? Remember that scene where he's standing up and the Conservatives are saying, hey, what happened to your opposition to this? And he gives the finger to the Conservatives. We all saw that. So Ken's at it again, though. And Ken MacDonald is just so funny in this interview. And this is why I'm showing most of it here. Because it's absolutely fascinating. And I have to thank the good folks at Northern Perspective who actually found this last night. And I think it's one of the most newsworthy items that we can possibly show right now. Because this shows you that the Liberal dissidents are prepared to vote against their own government in a non-confidence motion if Trudeau doesn't wake up. They want him to resign. If he's not going to resign, well, they'll vote against the government. Now, that's not going to mean Trudeau's going to leave. He will still lead the party into that next election and get the thrashing of his life.
As one of the MPs planning to ask the Prime Minister to resign, and he joins me now. Ken McDonald, it's good to see you again. Thanks for being here.
Yes, you as well.
People would not be surprised to see you as part of this effort to have the Prime Minister leave. What is your understanding of how this is supposed to roll out tomorrow in caucus?
Not completely sure. I think somebody will introduce it to the Prime Minister and probably give him the sheet and probably give a bit of a talk on it, I would think. I haven't heard any more on it than that. It's all kind of hush-hush until it actually happens, so we'll see what happens tomorrow. And the thing about it is, of course, what happens in caucus stays in caucus. I'd be very surprised if anybody comes out of that meeting and talks to reporters or anything about what was said or what was done.
Well, what happens in caucus stays in caucus in theory, Ken McDonald,
yes.
Because as you know, a lot has gotten out. But okay, I want to just put a couple of things down here as clear facts. You have seen the letter, right? It exists and you have signed the letter.
I have signed the letter, yes.
Okay, when you signed it, this was what, a week ago, 2 weeks ago?
It was Thursday, a week past, be 2 weeks.
Okay, I'll say this for Ken McDonald. At least he's got the honesty to say, I signed the letter. Yes, he's publicly said that. So, okay, thank you for your frank honesty.
Weeks.
It's like the 10th of October, right around then, right that way. Okay, when the House was sitting. And how many signatures were on the letter at the time you signed it? Because there's talk now that there are as many as 30. Ken Hardy said today he knows 18 people who have personally signed the letter. How many were there when you had signed it?
My signature was on the top of a clean page. There were other pages underneath it. I didn't leaf through it to see what was below the page.
Now, he's talking about up to 3 pages. You think there's just 30, 40, maybe 50? I've been saying 50, and I believe that's accurate.
Was signing, so I didn't see any names.
But there were signatures there. You saw, so you just didn't scrutinize them?
There were signatures on the page, underneath the page that I was signing, but I couldn't pick out who it was or who they were.
Okay, and so what you put your name to, is it as simple as we want Prime Minister Justin Trudeau to step down as Liberal leader?
Yes.
Okay, so this is going to be the request that is made to the Prime Minister in caucus tomorrow. I was speaking to someone who's part of this group, because you're all carved up into little pieces where everybody has a piece of it, but nobody knows all of it, is how it seems. And I'm told the plan is for one or more MPs to stand up in caucus, to make the request formally to the Prime Minister, but not necessarily to say how many MPs have signed the effort, but not to necessarily give him the full list of the names.
Okay.
Do you know that to be the case?
No,
have you been told that? Do you know anything other than that? Do you have contrary information to that?
No, I don't have any information on how they plan to present it, whether they're going to give them a copy of it or read out the names or just say a number that's on the document. I don't know.
Okay.
You think Ken's being entirely trustworthy and truthful here? I just laugh at Ken McDonald. He gets the information out there, but I had nothing to do with it. I just signed the letter, but don't ask me what's going to happen on Wednesday. I think he has probably a better idea about what's going to happen today.
So we on this program a week or so ago, Sean Casey came out and said that he thinks the Prime Minister should go. He has later confirmed that he has signed the letter, but that was after he made his intentions clear. You've signed it and said it. Wayne Long has signed it and said it. Obviously, it has to be more than that. You and Wayne Long are not running again. How do you think the Prime Minister will respond to it when it seems a lot of the people behind this effort are anonymous, or in your case, not running federally and leaving?
Yeah, well, it's not just about me not running. It's about who's coming behind me to run. And
this goes back to the poll, folks. They're talking about Liberal ridings disappearing because there's a lot of people in those ridings Liberals who want them to vote against, who want them to get Trudeau to leave.
I would hope that the Liberal Party will take notice of what happens tomorrow and do something about it. If the Prime Minister doesn't go, how does he fix it and come to terms with the people who signed that actual document?
But what is the or else? This is what I'm struggling with here, Ken McDonald,
because
everyone said you're signing a letter saying we want the Prime Minister to go, But what's the or else? Because that doesn't seem to be clear, even amongst the people who are planning this.
Yeah, and I don't think there's a definite plan. What I think to myself, and I haven't mentioned this to anyone, is that the thing I'd think about is if the Prime Minister doesn't respond in some way to this letter and the signatories that are on it, what happens when the next confidence vote comes before the House of Commons?
Now that, my friend, is very interesting. And that's the crux of what we're talking about today. This is a new threat. And we'll get back to Canada in a minute. This is a new threat from the backbenchers. Yeah, you don't listen to us. You don't think we're important. You don't want to do what we're telling you to do. All right. We'll show you. We'll show you who's boss. We'll vote against you in the next non-confidence vote. And that could happen any day.
Are we going to stand and vote with non-confidence, or are we going to stand and vote with the government? So maybe how the Prime Minister responds to this letter tomorrow might give some indication of, okay, are we okay the way we're going, or do we let the Prime Minister continue as is?
Okay, so wait a minute. I mean, for you to say that voting non-confidence is an option, is that something that's been discussed? Is that something you're thinking about?
I've heard it talked about. I haven't brought it up. It's just something that in my head that I think could possibly happen.
Something in my head that could possibly happen. Yes. That is Ken MacDonald. Does he know more about this? I think this is, he would not, let's put it this way. He would not go on a CBC broadcast and suggest that there are a number of MPs, not 2 or 3, but enough MPs to defeat the government. He would not be saying that unless this had not been discussed privately for the last week or so. Now, this is what's going on. How many MPs would it take? The Liberals are operating from a minority government already. They need the support of the NDP or the Bloc to win a non-confidence vote. If they get 40 to 50 Liberal MPs voting against their own government, it's history. In fact, at that point, we don't even need, it doesn't matter what the NDP or the Bloc decides to do. The Liberal government will implode because it's lost the support of that many caucus members. Now, we already know the Bloc has said it's going to vote against the government in the next non-confidence vote. So that means the NDP could still save this government if there's no threat from Liberal MPs themselves. And I'm telling you, this is a viable threat, and this could well happen. And if this threat is not squashed today after caucus, listen very carefully. I will be watching to see exactly what is said after caucus today. And if nobody addresses the potential for a non-confidence motion being supported by Liberal MPs, you know it's going to happen. And it's just a matter of time. But I come back to my original thesis. Justin Trudeau believes he can win this next election because he believes in himself that much. The narcissistic element here is huge. He is so ego-driven, so narcissistic, that he believes nobody else can pull this off. Nobody else can pull the Liberals out of their slump. They're 19 to 20 percentage points behind the Conservatives. He believes he can cure that. He believes that all it takes is just a little bit of his charm, a little bit more of his socks, more hair, more of his nonsense, and it's all going to be okay. Now, that's where Justin Trudeau is coming from, and he'll continue to come from there. And that's what you'll hear from Justin Trudeau, if you hear anything at all, if he even acknowledges what happened in caucus today. But his days from this point forth, from October 23rd, the days of Justin Trudeau are numbered as leader of the Liberal Party and Prime Minister of Canada. We are going to be having an early election. But Justin Trudeau thinks he can win that early election. Thankfully, for the history of Canada and for our future, I don't think he can win that election. I want to thank you all for joining me today. It's always a pleasure. God bless you. I will be back again tomorrow with more of the news you need to know, and we'll be watching all day. And like I said, pay careful attention to exactly what the Liberal cabinet ministers and MPs say after this caucus meeting, because I tell you, the Riot Act is being read to Justin Trudeau today, probably about 11 o'clock Eastern Standard Time. Bye for now. I'll be back again tomorrow with all the news you need to know so we can all continue to resolve to resist.